Hi everyone, really great to see you again. So this is the third of our videos. This is the third of three, unfortunately. So this is our last one. Today we're going to be talking about how to reach your customers. So essentially this is all about distribution strategy. So today we're going to be talking about three types of distribution strategy: business to consumer, B2C, business to business, B2B, and the latest buzzword, business to consumer, B2B2C. So when you're thinking about your own distribution strategy, do you have to choose one over the other? Or can you choose, a multiple of them? And the answer is yes, you can choose multiples of distribution strategies. Don't feel tied to just one. And very often companies choose more than one distribution strategy in order to mitigate the risks of one model over another. The last business that I worked in, actually, I used all three types of distribution strategy. I had a B2C and a B2B proposition through like an O2O quote engine. So it was like an online quote engine with a combined telesales operation. It had a really high customer value, which meant that it couldn't be like a straight through functionality. So it needed telesales at the end of it to close, as well as a B2B2C proposition through an intermediated channel of distribution, which was sometimes white labeled, sometimes branded. And what was interesting about it was that everybody loved the margin that came from the direct individual business, so the B2C business. So this was insurance, but the premiums were never high enough, right? So everyone, oh, I love the individual and family business, Alison, but can't you get more of it? But then for the B2B proposition, so when we had direct company business, the top line always looked amazing, right? But it never ran very well because the businesses, it was never a standard business. It was always kind of off piece, and they always wanted something a bit different, and everybody was really demanding, so it never ran very well. So it looked great top line, but the bottom line was always awful. And then the B2B2C perspective was you're always paying away commissions. So your year one commission, you thought, well, okay, right, okay, then the platforms earned that commission, but it was your renewals commission. You were giving away that commission forever and ever more. So whilst you were able to get to market quickly, you were always paying away a bigger chunk. So in order to mitigate the risks of one over another, it was great to be able to deploy all three channels of distribution. So it was a balanced view. Before we do a deep dive on each one of the different types of channels of distribution, I just want to point out this diagram that I've created for you here. And I want to illustrate here the relationship between distribution and marketing. And in this particular illustration, what I've done is I've shown a relationship where there is a B2B2C channel of distribution in place. So what you've got going on here is a business that has secured an intermediary in between it and the consumer. And what you can see here is that on the left-hand side, it's got a push model, right? And what they have done in this circumstance is that they have deployed what's called a push marketing strategy. And what they're doing is they are pushing their channel in order for that channel to then push their consumer to buy their products. And that's called a push marketing strategy. And what that does is it involves a lot of selling. Okay. And it means that the originating business doesn't have to put a lot of money into marketing itself, but it relies very heavily on its intermediated channel in order to push their client base for that client base to buy it, for them to purchase. It's slightly risky in as much as you have to trust your intermediary implicitly because they have to know your proposition inside out. and it requires a very sales heavy technique. The flip side of it is what's called a pull marketing strategy, which is where, as the originating business, you go to the consumer and then you pull them back through the channel and to the through to you through the intermediary. And by doing that, effectively what you're doing is you're saying to your demand, buy my product and you can buy it here. And by doing that, what you're doing is you're creating the demand yourself and you're saying, and this is where you can buy it. And it's the difference between a push marketing approach is where you're relying very heavily on a sales technique, whereas a pull marketing approach is relying on a buy-in type model. And it's the difference between selling and buying. Where you've got a buying model, you tend to have more advocacy and more repeat business, but it tends to require more marketing spend up front. So when you're thinking about what kind of distribution strategy you want to deploy, you should also think about what kind of marketing strategy you want to deploy at the same time. So just something to think about. So let's talk about business to consumer first of all. So business to consumer distribution strategy is essentially all about demand generation and gaining momentum. And kind of going back to that bullets versus cannonballs analogy that I referred to in the last video, this is all about finding the sweet spot, test and learn campaigns, and optimizing your cost per lead and cost per acquisitions, and balancing out the different elements of your campaigns in order to find those sweet spots. I'm going to assume that we're working on e-commerce proposition here, by the way, just as a given. And if you've got an e-commerce proposition and you've got a business to consumer proposition, this is absolutely a numbers game. Okay, and what you're doing here is you're managing the ultimate sales funnel. Now, when you've got an e-commerce proposition, the brilliant news is that you've got total transparency over your channel, total transparency, as long as you have tagged everything to within an inch of its life. You need to make sure that you have just followed a few house rules. And I'm sure I'm teaching my granny to suck eggs here, but just in case, I'm just going to go over a few basics. Make sure that when you're tagging, you're using Google Tag Manager, that you're not putting tags directly onto your site. If you put tags directly onto your site, you will, number one, slow it down. Because you will slow it down. You'll be then getting your developer to make unnecessary changes at unnecessary cost to you. So you don't want to do that. You also want to make sure that you keep the chain of events as unbroken as possible so that you can gather as much data as you can about your prospects, so that you can find out as much about your user experience as possible, so you know what's working, and really importantly, if it's not working for you, what's not working, right? Make sure that you're using all of the Google tools that are available to you. So Google Analytics, Search Console, Tag Manager, Business, Optimize, and AdWords. And altogether, all of those Google tools are a powerhouse. Okay, so please use them. They are truly awesome. And they're always adding, Google are always buying other businesses, developing new tools, new functionalities, so keep an eye out. And because they link everything together, you've got one login, everything's all linked together. It's fantastic. And there are other really fantastic tools that, I would recommend that you could have a look at. I would think about hooking up other things to your digital experience, to enhance it. Things like live chat, WhatsApp for Business. Think about things like live video monitoring session tools. There's a great little one out there called Inspectlet. Think about things like customer engagement platforms, like HubSpot or MailChimp or Campaign Monitor. Think about hooking your site up to review sites like Revu or Trustpilot, and also to CRM tools like Salesforce or Monday. So these tools I've used extensively. I can't recommend them highly enough. They are amazing. So then, as I mentioned, your key objective here when you're looking at B2B and your B2C, sorry, and you're looking at how to find your customers, your key objective is to generate demand. So how are you going to go about doing that? So there are a huge number of display media, of media types available to you, and I'm going to run through them. The first of which, sorry, is display media. So display media, is where you see, display ads around different websites everywhere, like on websites that you go and visit, every single day, you'll see, different boxes with different ads on and so on. That's this sort of more high level, what we would either call out of market or in market consideration type media. This is kind of at the much higher brand level type of media that you could consider to use. If you had a tight budget, this is the one I would consider dropping. If you didn't want to spend a lot of money, this is the one I would say, don't do this one if you don't have a lot of cash. Also, you have to think about, based on, the customer decision journey for your proposition, you need to be thinking about timings and so on as to when you would want to utilize this kind of media type. Big one is obviously paid search. You choose whether or not you use the search ads network, the display ads network, the video ads network. And within this, you can be enormously prescriptive about how and when you would advertise. I mean, you can seriously fall in a hole about how how you use this tool. This is people's full-time jobs about how this particular function works, and it can serve you really well. But conversely, you can burn a lot of money very, very quickly if you don't know what you're doing here. So just be aware that you can flood your site with very poor performing traffic and your bounce rate will go through the roof and you will have done nothing other than spend a lot of money. So don't think that because you've got paid search going on that you're going to get lots of sales. Just make sure that you've got your campaign set up correctly. Then the other really big one is search engine optimization or organic search. One thing to note here, and about coming up probably for about 2 years ago, Google launched some new 2 years ago guidelines, and anybody with shopping pages on their site will now be part of these guidelines, and they launched these new guidelines called YMYL, which is called Your Money, Your Life. And anybody, as I said, with shopping sites, so if you can buy things on your site, you fall under these guidelines. YMYL, Your Money, Your Life, means that you're under extra scrutiny by Google. And you have to follow what's called the EAT, the EAT principles. And your site has to be expert, E, authoritative, A, and trustworthy, T. So when you're thinking about the content on your site, they have to follow these 3 principles. So make sure that when you're thinking about that content, that you're always following these 3 principles. Look it up online when you're thinking about your content. If you're going to commission somebody like an SEO specialist to look at your on-site content, make sure that you talk to them about the YMYL guidelines. And then the last one is around social media. So setting aside content, social media content, you can also use social media to generate demand in the same way you do with paid search. And platforms like Facebook have become as sophisticated as Google AdWords when it comes to targeting. And my experience of using platforms like Facebook for demand generation, there's no doubt that they are higher up the funnel, no doubt. They're not as ready to buy as those people who are using the search network, for instance. But if you've got a relatively low value proposition, then using social media could be genius. So once your site is tagged and ready to go, and you've got your demand, you're ready to generate that demand, you obviously need to have a plan as to, like, how am I going to get that demand? What kind of demand do I need? How much demand do I need? How am I going to, create that into a plan? And so the way I always do this is to create a demand plan so that I can have certainty over how much traffic do I need, what kind of conversion metrics do I need to have in place, so that I always know that I'm coming from a place of certainty, right? So what you need to do to map this out is to think about how many users do I need to get from each media type? What's my marketing budget for each media type? What does my lead conversion rate need to be for that media type? What does my sale conversion rate need to be for that media type? And what is my average customer value? Once you've worked those things out, you will then know what your cost per lead and your cost per acquisition is, which means that you can then optimize from those two data points. And once you've got those two data points, that is when you are going to be really onto something. So it's a really complex and quite a detailed piece, and I know I've covered it really, really quickly. This is something I've been doing for about 15, 17 years. So, if anybody wants to come back to me and talk to me about it separately, please feel free to do so. Okay, so, all right, so let's talk about business to business. So this is the polar opposite of B2C, in as much as if B2C is the ultimate sales funnel, a lot of people have been actually saying with respect to B2B that this traditional sales funnel for B2B is officially dead. I mean, I've been reading that people are saying that it's officially dead, which is a bit dramatic, right? But it's actually in black and white out there. And there's no doubt that B2B has changed immeasurably over the last 10 years plus. So the B2B sales process is a longer sales process in as much as it takes longer to gain momentum. The target audience pool is smaller, and the lead time to conversion is longer. But the flip side of that is that unlike B2C, the average customer value is much, much larger, which means that the value of relationship management becomes a lot more important. So with B2C, I mean, you can do straight through. You don't even need to talk to anybody. Whereas B2B, when the average customer value edges up, that's the point at which people need to have interaction. Now, there's been an emergence of a new type of B2B buyer. And it's around the sort of professionals that are now sort of age 35 to 40 are now occupying positions of decision-making power. And these younger kind of B2B decision makers, it's absolutely true that they don't like to engage with salespeople as early in the process as previously. And it's true that this new generation of B2B buyer, they're not going away, right? I mean, this is the new generation, this is millennials coming in, and this, you know, it's just a completely different type of buyer, right? And what's absolutely true is that they are researching, and they're doing so much more research now before they are engaging with a salesperson. And there's the levels of skepticism around the messaging that salespeople are providing are so much higher than maybe in years gone by. So it's good news and bad news. The good news is the leads are hotter, but the bad news is the prospects are more skeptical. So how do you create a balance of volume of independent, trustworthy content and capturing sales leads at the same time? And my view of this is that the way to go about it is all about content marketing, to balance out the skepticism from your target audience. And this is an on-site and an off-site content marketing strategy. And an on-site content marketing strategy will also help you to build up leads at the same time. So when you're looking at an on-site marketing strategy, content strategy, sorry, what I'm thinking about here is utilizing things like blog content, white paper content, and ebook content and subscriber bases. Specific, and when I'm thinking about developing a lead pool, I'm thinking about white papers, ebooks, subscriber bases. And when you've got especially white papers and ebooks, what you can do is to use those downloadable ebooks and put people into lead funnels. And that becomes incredibly marketable, because you can then, when you can put those people into a funnel, you can then serve them other content that they can be interested in, and then you can weed them out into hot leads. With the offsite content, then you can commission other writers to be posting content, and in the same way as the EAT principles, you can be demonstrating your independent expertise in the market, so that your prospect base will see you as an independent expert and not peddling, you know, your sales messages. The linchpin of this whole thing, however, is your CRM. And your sales management process for B2Bs, because the CRM is the key to success. There's no doubt about that. I mean, I've worked in sales, or I've worked in organizations where the CRM is revered and the CRM is endured, right? And the business where the CRM was revered was where it had really strict protocols in place. So what happened was, the CRM had to be fulfilled, with every contact had to be logged, right? Every meeting with a possible lead had to be logged in order to get stakeholders involved in an RFP. So if you wanted a meeting and there was an RFP in the offing and you needed someone else to attend, then you had to log it in the CRM to get other people involved. Then RFPs were all managed centrally, and then they had really strict go no go protocols around whether or not a piece of business was going to go ahead if it was non-standard. So standard business would just kind of go ahead as normal, but if there was something that was a bit off-piste about it, then there were these go no go templates and meetings around, would we do this, would we not do this, and so on and so forth. And then if we said go, then we'd go, and if we said no go, then everyone walks away. And what it meant was that pipeline management was a dream, right? You always knew where you were with your pipeline because the pipe, it was faithfully fulfilled. And because RFPs were centrally managed, there was this consistency um, of RFPs that went out the door. They all looked the same, they all sounded the same, and they were all crucially things that we could do. Whereas the flip side of it was the other business that I worked in, where the CRM was just endured, um, and people just kind of plugged in things, as and when, and the pipeline management was just a joke. It was just fantasy, quite honestly. And then the RFP management process was just managed kind of by whoever. And it was really inconsistent. And what happened when an RFP was won, it was really difficult to fulfill, because what happened was the person who had put the RFP together had very often not checked, either with operations or one of the other teams, that what they promised could actually be done. Um, and and then obviously that caused loads of downstream issues with like manual workarounds, and ultimately it impacted the expense ratio. So and it always came back to the CRM and actual kind of sales management techniques and protocols. So it's one of those things, right? If you're running a B2B sales operation, it's all about the CRM and it's all about sales management practice. So next one is B2B2C. So in the context of this one, I'm going to be talking about it in the context of its current definition, which is to think about it in where you're thinking. So the originator business, the first B in the B2B2C, is looking to sell their proposition via the distributor business, either by white label or using their own brand, or they're the second B in the business B2B2C, and they are a distribution platform. Okay, so let's go to the first B in the B2B2C. So if you need to find a platform to gain distribution, it doesn't have to be either or. Like, you don't have to choose, well, I either have to have, it has to be my brand, or it has to be a white label. It can be either or. So you don't have to make that choice. The platforms like Amazon have completely blown open access to many businesses that have in the past just been exclusive access to the B2B land in the past. That whole value chain has been blown wide open. So if you were to think, oh, this is just white label, don't think that. You can be your own brand if that's what you choose to be. So don't think that's closed off to you. You should do the research anyway and see what else is out there. See if you've got competition. See if there's demand, and don't let other B2B businesses tell you what the market needs. So don't let them clip your wind. Okay. But if you do decide to do business with any kind of platform or distributor, their brand, that distributor brand, needs to be of reciprocal value to yours. Okay, so do you remember what we were talking about? That brands need to be a positive association of who you are as a brand. So just remember that. And when you are associating yourself with another brand that's as important as this one, and I'm sure that you have had this in the other videos, but just make sure that you're deploying kind of rigorous vendor selection criteria. Whenever I would do something like this, I would always be asking questions like, is the partner growing or shrinking in the market overall by market size. Is the partner registered in all the markets in which they trade? Does a partner pay on time? Like not you, but is this an indication of their business practice? Like for fraud and KYC, like have you undertaken all the appropriate checks and so on, right? And as I mentioned earlier in my own example, if you do choose this route, whether it be white label or under your own brand, you will gain faster speed of momentum, right? You will get to market faster, which is great news as a startup. But the offset of that, the flip side of that, the opportunity cost is that you will, number one, lessen your brand recognition and you will be paying them forever, right? There will be a commission, you'll be paying a portion of your profits to them forever. So your decision is whether or not you can make it on your own without them, or you absolutely need them and their distribution platform. So that's kind of the decision you need to make. And then the second B in the B2B2C is the distribution platform. So dependent on your buyer target audience, you're essentially a B2B or a B2C business that we've already talked about. So we've already covered this ground. The major difference here is that you've got both buyers, which we've covered, and sellers, right? So you've got two distinctly target audience dynamics with different wants and needs to consider and meet, right? So we've covered those buyers across those modules, right? So we don't need to go over that ground again. But sellers we've not talked about, and I'm doing this really interesting project at the moment with the founder of a B2B2C online pre-owned luxury fashion retailer. And one of her key challenges is that she's literally drowning in inventory, right? And her value proposition is she's flourished during COVID, right? She's basically got a recession-proof business because many women have gone into their wardrobes during COVID and they've used the opportunity to declutter, try and earn some cash, and they've taken out, luxury designer pieces and they've given it to her to sell on her platform, right? But at the beginning of her business, she wasn't focused enough. She didn't have a clear vision and value proposition. And she wasn't clear enough about exactly what kind of fashion brands she wanted. And that's why she's drowning in inventory. So now that she's got, and she accepted almost every single designer brand. So she's like, oh my God, I've got so many clothes, it's ridiculous, right? So now she's got a really clear vision and value proposition, and we're working on refining her seller strategy so that she only accepts or offers higher commissions for brands that she wants, for seasons that she's currently selling, and for the condition of clothes that her clients are looking for. And so in doing so, it means that her sellers know exactly what to offer her, right? And in return, their items sell quickly and they get their commission and get the possibility of higher commissions, right? So it's like a win-win. So it's a great seller strategy. So it's something to think about when you're thinking about your seller strategy. So that's everything for the last video. It has been such a pleasure to talk to you about all three topics, from marketing misconceptions to brand and value proposition, and to today's topic about how to find your customers. And as I mentioned in the first video, startups are hard, and I wanted to take a moment to congratulate you on your progress so far. And please don't forget to take the time to do that for yourself and for your team from time to time. So this is a journey, and don't forget to enjoy the ride. Good luck. Bye bye.